Hello, and thank you for listening to the Hilariously Unemployed podcast. I'm your host, Dana Duckworth, also known as the Big Speaker. My goal with this podcast is ultimately to get someone hired. I know all too well the impacts of unemployment and layoffs. My guest and I hope to provide insight and resources that will support someone in gaining their next opportunity. You can support the Hilariously Unemployed podcast and those who are impacted by unemployment by giving this podcast a 5-star review, sharing it with someone who's hiring, or someone who's hilariously unemployed. I hope that you enjoy the show and find some laughter throughout. Hello, and welcome back to the Hilariously Unemployed podcast, where I am your host, the Big Speaker. I'm not going to call myself Dana Duckworth no more at the top of the show because y'all know what it is. This is episode 3, and of course, I'll be naming it later of season 2. I am so excited to be back with you all on another Friday. It'll be on platforms by Saturday, but keep in mind, on Saturday, I'm going on a booze cruise for my auntie's birthday. So it might be a little bit late because the champagne will be flowing and I will be going. Anyway, I've been having some car trouble recently, y'all, and I picked my vehicle up today. So Blanca is back with me after $2,500 and much more time than I expected it to take. I'm just happy that I could afford to get it done. If you all listened to the episode with Dr. Darla Bishop, she talked about financial freedom and how we as Black people sometimes had that angst about car trouble and not being able to deal with it, or the anxiety of it putting your family behind financially for months and months. Well, I still kind of get those feelings in my stomach, but now I'm able to pay for it and move forward. So, welcome back, Blanca. Thank you for acting up right before you got paid off, but I'm going to ride you until the wheels fall off. All right, y'all. That's enough of that big speaker rant for this week. I am so excited to welcome you to the show, Matthew. I have a guest for y'all that he's welcomed me into his community. I know that this space of Hilariously Unemployed is a community in itself, but Matthew has welcomed me into another community that I'm so excited to be a part of. Even though they jumped me when I first got in and asked me if I put sugar in my grits or wore Crocs, and y'all know if it's a Croc to rock, I'm a Crockett. They have welcomed me so much. So I was so excited to make his acquaintance and learn about all the amazing things that he's been doing. He has an extremely supportive community. His career has taken so many different turns. He knows a lot about HR, a lot about talent acquisition, and he's funny, y'all, just like me. So, Matthew, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Please say hello to my Hilaries.
Hey, what's going on, Hilaries? What is going on? Happy Friday. Thank you all for joining today. Dana, you know how Black folks and other people of color and just people in general, they be a little bit late. So it's okay. Sometimes it's like going to church. You got to get through praise and worship first. Mm-hmm. And then by the time the speaker starts speaking, then people will be in the pew. So it is all good. It is all good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I fully expect people to catch the replay or to come in like 10 minutes before we wrap. I honestly believe that is someone cutting my grass in my suburban home today. Didn't schedule that properly, but hopefully I can cut that out in the replay. Welcome to suburbia, folks. I got a lot of grass. All right, Matt. So I want to tell them a little bit about how we met and how I got to join your community. So last year, I was in San Diego for a National Apartment Association conference because y'all know I do that multifamily thing, right? And my best friend happened to be in town as well. And she was there for a real estate conference. She's an amazing realtor in Nashville. If you need a Nashville realtor, Murfreesboro, Smyrna, my girl has got you. And we linked up and she invited me to a Black Encompass event because that's the organization that she works for. And I met a gentleman by the name of Nico who was putting on for the Black Encompass. And I was just like, this is so amazing. I love what you're doing here. And we get to chopping it up. And then he's like, oh, my friend Matt, I drove across country with him. He does a podcast. You will love this guy. And Matt, I'll let you take it from there on your end.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And look, I was just telling someone earlier today, it's like, look, cross country trips can go one of two ways. Either it's going to go good and you're going to like the person and you're going to have a good friendship, relationship, whatever, or it's going to be the worst thing ever. You're going to ask to be dropped off in Kansas somewhere versus finishing the rest of the way, and it's going to go horrible. right? I can get into a time even when I was doing not a full cross country trip, but even a trip at that point, I was living in Maryland. We had to go down to Atlanta, and it was during the winter. And it was during one of those weird times where South Carolina had a whole bunch of ice and whatnot. And child, let me tell you, this person that, I was trying to be a good friend, a good person too, they couldn't drive. I said, you had to get in the back or take the Greyhound the rest of the way. But that's not what we're talking about today. What we are talking about instead is like, look, I want to first and foremost shout out to Nico. Definitely, you all check out his platform in case you all don't know. He hosts a show called What Drives You.
Yeah,
if you ever seen any type of show where they do like the show in the car and they driving around, they chit chat and everything, I think it's a very cool platform. Him and I have an episode together. Stay tuned for more on that. And then even just Dana, it's gonna be time for y'all to do a little something after a while.
For sure. So we were supposed to do an episode about a week or so ago, but it didn't work. It conflicted. But I am gonna tap back in with Nico. And now that I got Blanca back, I'm gonna show him what drives me. I'm gonna be right up in there with my wood grain to do an episode. So yes, that is the power of connection, y'all. Man, once you get to talking to people and you figure out what they're passionate about and who they know, I've just been so grateful for the fact that people are like, let me introduce you to. That has been the start of some amazing relationships for me in the last 2 years. Let me introduce you to. So, thank you so much, Nico, for the let me introduce you to Matt. All right, Matt. So, give my audience the reason why they're really here. We're gonna get right into these career stories because you got a lot to share with us. Tell my audience if you are, how long have you been hilariously unemployed?
Oh my goodness. So let me answer this in two buckets, because sometimes depending on how you count the time, it depends. So let me do this way. Let's start with the most traditional bucket, right? W-2, not working for any company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm gonna throw a curveball in here at the end of my answer. So as of, let me think, today's what, March 2024?
Yes.
The last time that I worked for some other organization that wasn't my own, and I'll get into that here in a 2nd, was about this time last year. It was around that March, April-ish, kind of late spring time frame. Obviously, we're going to get into more about talking about layoffs and rifts and fuck ups and oh shoot, can we cuss on LinkedIn? Anyway, I just said it now. It's just too late now. But we're going to talk about all of that and all of the head assery that tends to happen in the job market and everything. So, needless to say, it's been about a year now, working for someone else. For those of you that don't know me and that aren't as familiar with me, I am host of Young BLK HR. We have many things going on, and I'll get to that later. But I'm a host of my own podcast, and we're going to be launching a podcast network. Stay tuned for that. I'm also a consultant at Honest Human Resources Consulting, where we help people within their business, within their professional development lives, and all that good stuff. But we'll get back to that. Now, here's the other part how I'm going to answer that question. It's funny that you asked me that question because I was like, I don't know if I'm qualified for this anymore. And granted, I haven't put it on LinkedIn yet, but I actually just got an offer letter in like a couple hours ago, which is kind of ironic. So maybe this is going to be a little bit of a spinoff, and let's talk about being hilariously unemployed. Right? Nah, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's only been a few hours, so I know you still got the feeling.
The Similac in the offer letter and the ink still dry. So, with that being said, definitely back into the rat race now again. If you know me in real life, a lot of my perspective on sharing information like that. I tend to delay it on purpose. I'll give you a quick example, and I know we're going to talk about this with Netflix in a bit. But I was at, you know what? I'm gonna do this as a quick icebreaker. Dana.
Yes, sir.
Guess how long I was at Netflix before I posted it to LinkedIn? It's take a wild guess.
90 days?
I'm gonna give you one more try.
6 months.
6 months? All right. So I was at Netflix 7 going on 8 months before I ever updated my LinkedIn. For a lot of different reasons. For a lot of different reasons. And it's one of those things where I feel like, look, working, being employed, all that jazz, it's like dating. You got to date the person for a little while, before y'all start taking selfies, wearing matching shirts, matching pajamas, proposing and all that stuff. You got to date a little while. So
Absolutely.
I say all that to say, I'll be making those updates, in the somewhat future, maybe a couple of months from now. But I'm excited. And then also the last piece of your question is, look, even when I'm not working, Dominique knows this the best.
Hmm.
Even when I'm not working, I'm working.
Yeah.
So it's been one of those things when we think about being an entrepreneur, developing, being a contractor and all that good stuff. We've been doing that for a number of years now. So I apologize, Dana, but I barely qualify to
He
be
is no
hilariously unemployed.
longer hilariously unemployed, people. Y'all heard it here first. No, you are more than qualified because you made me laugh in the discovery call, and you've got multiple resources that will definitely help my audience through their hilarious unemployment. I want to go back to something you said because y'all know I love to tell y'all my business. When he said he did not post his job at Netflix for that long, that's how I am with my boyfriends, y'all. You will never see them on my IG because we go together in my head, but we're not social official, okay? But just know that I am loved and highly favored by a multitude of people. Anywho,
Dana, that's one way to say you off the mark. I mean, you can. I mean, it's granted. It's
no, no,
always
no, 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 no,
Marco
no,
in
no,
here.
no, no.
Shout out to Marco. We
I'm
have.
in the market, okay?
Oh, you in the market?
I'm
Okay, I
in the
got you.
market. We're gonna move forward. Any
Right,
whoosie. I don't know who's listening. All right.
right.
So tell us about your early career. So, talent acquisition, HR. How did you really find this passion for HR, talent acquisition? And then you cultivated a community about it. So, I know that there had to be some passion. Or did you just fall into a job like most of us do when we become
Right.
adults?
I got you. So look, for me, it's kind of a pet peeve, but I get why people say it. You know how people be like, "Oh, I fell into this and this," like
Mm-hmm.
they tripped and fell into something.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't fall into the HR. I did not fall into talent acquisition. I was very purposeful, but even just kind of walking that through a little bit more is, and I'll give you all a fun fact because I'm full of them. You can check out and listen to my honest humor resources, his story, where I really get into depth into this as well, all the way back in the first season. My God, it's been so long. But with that being said, look, when I think about HR, when I think about talent acquisition, a lot of people know me for that. It's one of those things where even before I had my first grown up job, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
I always knew I wanted to help people. I didn't know quite how yet, but I
Mm-hmm.
was like, you know what? I don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, none of that. I don't want to be a psychiatrist, none of that. Don't get me to prescribe stuff to folks because
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have it loose. But I wanted to do something where it's like, hey, everybody go to work, right? Or a lot of people work. Let me see how I can help people work in that space. And I
Mm-hmm.
think HR made sense as a sort of natural transition because I was a psych major at the time and
Okay.
all that jazz. Went to A&T. Shout out to my Aggies out there.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to all the other HBCUs. We love y'all too.
And as you
And
be hold that green to go, I'm a Spartan.
and it was one of those things where a lot of people don't realize this about me, but I didn't come into talent acquisition exclusively until about 4 or 5 years into my career.
Okay.
I started off on the HR side of things. I was a journalist for a couple of years. Then that business got sold. Somebody bought them out. They gave them $1 and they said we had to go. Right. It's one of those things where it kind of makes me think of that meme or that gif where Felicia Rashad was saying, "When you leave, make sure you go." And they
Mm-hmm.
closed up shop. And they said we had to go. So with that being said, you won't see this on my LinkedIn, but even after that, I pivoted away from HR completely for
Okay.
about 2 or 3 years. I was in the mortgage space. I was working on the back end of trying to help elderly and veterans get homes and all that. I
Mhm.
was a banker, so I was that. A lot of people think bankers are just like sleazy head asses in suits every day. Well, I was in big future energy at PNC. Shout out to y'all. I love y'all. But it's one of those things where it's like, hey, look, I was doing that for a while, and then I just missed the HR part of it.
Okay.
So, needless to say, I was like, you know what? At this point in time, I had just quit on the whim. at the time, in my baker space, decided to be a contractor, just to do more at this point stuff in talent. I had gotten exposed to that early on in my first role, but I stayed in HR. And then I tell you not, and Dominique knows this for sure. There's a reason why I'm picking on her a lot, but I was eating Girl Scout cookies one day. And shout out to y'all who have already bought Girl Scout cookies. Y'all know they sell it. They at all the stores, probably even the weed places near y'all. But I was eating Girl Scout cookies, and I was like, I wonder if they hire. At this point, I was already, already in my job search and all that. And I went on their site and I saw this talent acquisition manager role in California. Keep in mind, Dana, in the audience, I was in Delaware. We live in Delaware, right? We on the East Coast. So I was like, let me shoot my shot, see what they're gonna do. Make a long story short, got the job. They started me remote before remote became cool. And then we moved across country, had a baby that still has Similac on her ears real good, and we hightailed it to California. That's how I got out west. And then since then, it's been a pretty dope journey, experience, a funny one in some instances, and we'll get to that here soon, but really just matriculating through talent and HR and talent and all this stuff. I feel like at this point, Dana, my career is kind of polyamorous in a sense, which is why I really like to always be applying. But I'm gonna get there in a little bit.
Okay, so you said a lot. Do they give you
Uh,
they give you Thin Mints when you work for Girl Scouts?
Let me tell you. So when I was at Girl Scouts, and I like telling people this, I was at one of the in the Bay Area, so people familiar with California, Oakland, San Francisco, all that. So I was working at the Girl Scouts there. In the country, they were one of the biggest councils, they would call them, behind New York, which is HQ, and Austin, which is a pretty big space for them. So I was at one of the places where the kitchens, and I'm
Mm.
trying to tell you, when I was at Girl Scouts, I was the plug, right? I was there testing before they had came out with them s'mores in like the sandwich mode,
Oh,
because
wow.
they had older s'mores back then, and they switched over. I was there when they decided to rebrand the little shortbreads, and I also was there when they dropped the caramel mousse. I can't even think of it, but it was another cookie that came out and everything. So I had a lot of cookies. I had a lot of fun. A lot of fun there.
Well, we now have a history of the cookies and everything that was going down there. I mean, I love a Thin Mint, y'all. But I try to stay away from them because y'all know I'm on my fitness. Anyway, Matt, so your career, you've always just wanted to serve people, which I think is absolutely amazing. I feel the same way. And most people in customer service, they just find something about themselves. It's like, I want to serve the people and make sure that people are having a good experience. Now, Matt, I know we've been seeing so many layoffs, and I've noticed it because a lot of my guests have come from the HR space or they've come from talent acquisition. Like when I first started this podcast, the very first guest that I had, my former colleague, she was a recruiter. She was a senior recruiter at the company that we both work for. So we've been seeing some tremendous hits happen to those parts of the business. What are your thoughts with your lens about the massive amounts of layoffs in this space? And do you think it's going to let up anytime soon?
Yeah. So look, first and foremost, I'll start off by saying, since the pandemic and all that good stuff, it's been one of those situations where, of course, people have been going through, me too included. I actually can't wait to kind of give you all a high level summary of what that impact has been like for me and my family. But it's one of those things where it's like, look, there's a lot of seriousness out there on LinkedIn, etc. And sometimes it can be kind of melancholy, kind of down. And I always tell people, and this is why I'm starting off with this, um, I always tell people to look, take a break, get away from LinkedIn if
Hmm.
necessary and other platforms. But when I think about, kind of the whys and what's going on, let's just face it, one of the things, and I'm going to give you all not serious answer, but kind of answers the question. It's one of those things where outside looking in, it's been a whole bunch of head assery going on. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is a lot of companies, we know tech and other organizations, blah, 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 they've really been in, to a certain extent, a pissing contest, right?
Hmm.
In terms of when we think about the why behind layoffs, or one of the whys is look, one of the most common reasons is simple. Companies were overhired,
Yeah.
right? There's no there's no way to, to change that, right? They were overhired. They got to a certain point, they had their oh shit moment. Now we got to lay off people, right? And if you
Mhm.
ever talk to or interact with someone in HR who can either formally or even informally tell you about, how layoffs and all that work, it's not the most fun thing, but it's one of those things where it's a cycle. And I try to tell people, when I was at places like Netflix, et cetera, from a headcount and workforce planning perspective, we were doing that stuff out to 2025, 2026.
Mhm.
So things were known years in advance, not just places like that, but all over. And just to give the hilarious some context, I was at Netflix. When did I get there? 2022. Yeah, 2022 to 2023, I believe.
Mhm.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, look, this is why, and Dominique knows this a lot. This is why I always tell people to always be applying. You will never know what's going to happen. You never know, which way the wind is going to blow, what skills and whatnot are going to be in demand from one year to the other. You
Mhm.
just never know. And it's one of those things where it's like, hey, keep monotonous relationships for other human beings. But when it comes to jobs, you gotta take more of a polyamorous approach. You gotta have something that where if the main job goes away, you at least got some sort of backup so that you aren't blowing your savings, right? You aren't
Mhm.
going through your credit, your cars and limits. You aren't doing all that good stuff. So I mean, honestly, Dana, that's just kind of how I see it. I definitely think it's continuing to happen. I feel like my bones tell me we've gotten through like the peak of it,
Mhm.
slowly going down. So I'd be curious to see how 2025 and the 2026 turns out. But it's one of those things where we're going to see a lot of people, myself included, hint, hint, myself included, you're going to have to pivot or be poked. So it's
Absolutely.
one of those things, that I see with that.
Absolutely. So you kind of led into it. You kind of spilled the beans a little bit and why I think some people were inclined to listen up this time. What's your favorite streaming network?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I'm gonna pick on the recency effect. I had this previously and I need to spend the block on them, but Hulu
Oh, so
has
not
had
Netflix.
some little gems on there. Maybe I'm being biased when I say this, but it's one of I've been looking at platforms like Hulu. Big shout out to Peacock. They've came a long
Oh
way.
yeah, Peacock. That's
It,
where I get my
yep,
Dayline on every single
yep.
night.
Yep. And even I'm gonna shout out Tubi. We know
Yes,
Tubi is
Tubi.
Tubi.
Mhm.
But even just kind of thinking about Netflix, for me, Netflix has been old faithful.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's other platforms out there like Stars and all that good stuff.
Now, Matt, my
Everybody,
audience don't really care what your favorite streaming network is
right?
at
I like
all.
all of
They just want to be
them.
messy and hear what
Right.
went down at Netflix. So,
Uh, so,
do
but
you
look,
still have your login from like I'm sure they give out complimentary Netflix logins when you work there?
yeah, so the way that works out is, you always gonna have your login, right? It's not a separate, or special login that you have when you work there. If anything, what they do internally is allow you to preview stuff
Okay.
sometimes months before they drop. So when I think about working at Netflix, I'm over here, watching Stranger Things, watching, Squid Games, this, that, and the third, months before, and it's like, damn, I wish I could talk to somebody about this, but they're not gonna know what the hell I'm
Oh,
talking about
yeah, and you
because it
probably get,
came
like,
out.
the Ready to Love, the Love is Blind, all
Yeah,
of those
yeah,
shows in advance
yep.
and no oh my
Right.
gosh.
So it's
Yeah,
like,
that
yeah,
would
so
kill
you
me.
watch the whole season, the whole show, whatever the case may be, a month or two before it dropped, and you just sitting over there, can't spoil nobody. People feel a certain type of way. You start spoiler alerts and whatnot. And it's just one of those things where that was a really cool privilege,
Mhm.
and really cool kind of insight. And it just makes you realize, like, before something drops, how far in advance, that the show is completed. So that was
That was
one of my
a
favorite
lovely
things about
perk.
Netflix. But look, we're obviously past that part, and I definitely wanted to. I know you wanted me to share this as well, but just in terms of how we how I separated from Netflix.
Mhm.
And every time that I think about this, I'm like, number one, you can't make this up. Number two, my silly, probably most likely intoxicated head ass that wanted to pick up the phone while I was on vacation, which I don't recommend anyone do ever.
If you get a
So
call
I,
from work
I was
when
in
you are off work, don't answer that work phone,
exactly
send it in
right.
an email.
So here we go. So picture this. And for those of you that may be connected to me or seen a recent post, I asked about what was the longest flight you've ever taken. And the answer that I have for that is the flight that came with the fact that I was flying back home unemployed. So I was in Mexico at this point, probably for a friend's birthday. I think that year we had doing my thing with the guests and everything, drinking lots of Mexican water, aka tequila and all that
Mhm.
good stuff. And it was one of those things where when I travel internationally, I use WhatsApp. Right, a lot of people do it for phone calls and all that. So on that particular day, I was expecting a call from someone else, but WhatsApp, maybe they just being cheap. They don't have like caller ID for real,
Correct.
for real.
Yeah.
It's just a number that pop up. So I'm like, all right, bet, phone ringing. Let me hop out the pool real quick, go grab this. And when I answered that call and I heard the sound, the voice of my skip level manager,
Mm.
I was like, and she was like, "Hey, this is such and such. How are you doing? Blah blah blah." And in my mind, I was thinking either something has happened with my manager,
Mhm.
unbeknownst it did,
Mhm.
or this is gonna go. This is fit to go back for me. And it's one of those things where, and again, for especially for my HR folks on the call, when organizations aren't laying off folks like Better did, via Zoom, some organizations they'll do a little call trying to make it personal. So she was telling me the very, very unfortunate news that we're experiencing some layoffs, revenue is going down because y'all, Hillary's, and other people around, y'all be sharing y'all passwords, making
We're
folks,
not Hillary's, we're hilarious, but continue.
Hillary, hilarious, however it is. No, I'm just kidding. But, it's one of those things where she was explaining, in part, people are sharing their passwords, Netflix is losing revenue, we're putting all our money in the games, this, that, and the third. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to lay you off. And I'm like, and I told her this, and I was like, well, damn, I'll just say Susie as a moniker. Well,
Mhm.
damn, Susie. I mean, have you ever seen the movie Friday? And she was like, yeah, with such and such. And I was like, now look, how you firing me on my day off, or how I'm
Yeah.
laid off on my day off?
On
Like
vacation
y'all,
at that.
exactly on vacation. Y'all knew I was fit to disappear a little bit, get some rest and relaxation. Now I
Mhm.
need to go get another massage because now I'm stressed,
Yeah.
right? Because I have to at this point wrap the trip up in about 2 or 3 days to go home. And on that long flight, I was like, damn, you can't make this up. You really can't make this up. So needless to say, I get there, do your offboard and stuff, get back home and whatnot. And it's one of those things where I'm sure everybody has seen Fast and the Furious, but I don't know why. If y'all remember Fast and the Furious, I know there's like 100 of them now, but the Fast and the Furious where Paul Walker died, right,
Mhm.
in the series, and it was one of those things where that song was playing in relation to Netflix in my mind, and I was like, wait a minute, they got rid of me. Why am I over here grieving and being sad and all this stuff about it? And they was cool about it. I'm not gonna lie. I've heard worse layoff stories and whatnot, but I think that's the overall personality of Netflix. So that's kind of how they laid me off. They laid me off. I was on vacation, over 3,000 miles away, and that was the longest 7 to 8 hour flight back to Seattle at that point that I ever took.
Yeah.
I got caught on my vacay.
So
So
we've got I have to make a hilariously unemployed bingo card because now we've got Mexico, we've got in line at Disney World, and we've got laid off in Australia. So we are working our way around the globe
right,
as people have gotten laid off in very, very strange situations and places. So knowing that you have had these experiences in your career, I like to talk about why you founded your podcast network, and how you've been leveraging your experiences and challenges that you face in your career to empower other young Black people in HR and support them through similar challenges.
Right. And one thing that I'm gonna give you a hard time out in public, I like to say, for my podcast, it is Young Black HR.
Yes.
Shout out to Prathan and the team at Black in HR. But please, y'all know we are two different platforms.
YNG
We
BLK HR.
Exactly. That's it. And us too, Prathan and I, we have done an episode and some content and events with them as well. So I always like to tell people, why y'all over here making up names for? We Young Black HR, and
Mm-hmm.
Black in HR is dope as well. But needless to say, thinking about the why. So look, even before the pandemic, it was one of those things where, I wanted to create a space where it was really honest and real and casual when we think about talking about the things that affect our community or communities as Black and Brown professionals, but especially as Black professionals in our experiences. If you ever listen to Young Black HR, you realize that we are very non-traditional in
Mm-hmm.
terms of how we talk about corporate experiences and all the hot topics and all that good stuff. You will realize that, and maybe even for those people who aren't HR professionals on the call, you'll realize that HR is just so serious. And which in part, Dana, this is why I love this platform. It's like, yes, we can laugh at our pain, we can lighten it up, we can do all these things. And it's one of those things where I just wanted to tell the stories of Black professionals in the workplace. And
Yeah.
yes, to all my guests, but thinking about making this particular space, this network, that's really what drove me and kind of why I started the show. 8 seasons later, 100,000 or so plays later, and a podcast network on the way. So stay tuned for more of that.
Congrats to you on that podcast network and creating that community, and for, taking that untraditional route around, HR and the way that we talk about professionalism. I know for me, humor is my way through a lot of things. So I use that in every professional setting that I am in. And I think it's also what helps me connect with so many people, especially as a speaker. If we're not laughing, we're not learning in one of my classes, my courses. So I
Right.
definitely believe in using humor as a tool. So we talked about your layoff from Netflix. Can we talk about your termination and how your most recent role before now, because you just made an announcement to us, was not really in alignment with you and what it is that you wanted to do?
Yeah, so thinking about that, if anyone knows my story or stories or history, anything like that, I try to tell people that look, I've come from both sides of the spectrum. I've undergone layoffs, undergone rifts.
Mhm.
A couple of instances have been furloughed, but also on the more what I'll consider the more termination side. You can't have a good career without being fired at least once, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, look, you can tell, especially on LinkedIn, where people are giving advice on stuff, and you're like, you talking here like you ain't never, have gone through X,
Mhm.
right? Terminations, whatever the case may be. And it's one of those things where I am proud to have gone through all of my experiences. But even when I think about one of the most recent, um, it came on paper. Look, I'm gonna talk HR for a little bit. On paper, if outside looking in, you would see it. One of HR's favorite labels on some termination docs is related to performance. But
Mhm.
let's dig a little bit more into that. When I think about being in that type of space that I was at, there's always a lot of things that can impact and affect performance. For me, and even just kind of taking this time away and off, burnout is real,
Yeah.
right? It's one of those things where it's like, hey, look, if you are, and I made a post about this a while back, if you, especially Black and Brown folks, if you are in a place that isn't psychologically safe, you are not going to succeed. And psychological safety is a topic in and of itself, and we're not going to take up the whole time with that. But it's one of those things where, sometimes, the prayers of your enemies or those who are wanting to compete you are heard and or answered as much as the prayers of those that are wanting to root from you and all that. And it's one of those things where when I think about the space in, I was working and I had to say to myself at a moment, Matt, what the hell are you doing, Dana? In this role, I was still working in talent,
Mhm.
and I found myself working 10, 12 hour shifts.
Mhm.
And it was one of those things where I'm like, wait, if I'm gonna be working this long, trying to save the world, one wreck at a time, I need some overtime or something.
Yeah.
Make me think, I need to be down at the factory somewhere if I'm doing all this. But it's one of those things where I'm trying to tell people, terminations and other forms of, I'll say, separation from a company, they aren't there to stop your progress. They're there to serve as a speed bump in a little bit, in a sense, of your career. And it's ultimately for your better. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, without this experience, I wouldn't have been there,
Mhm.
right? Without, the company way back in the beginning of my career selling off, I wouldn't have been in California. Without Girl Scouts, and here's a good one, without Girl Scouts, for example, 6 months in, telling me that, hey, we ran out of money for your position. What in the hell? How do you do that?
Yeah.
Don't y'all plan this a little bit better? And giving me, either A, 2 more weeks in the position that I had, and then we're going to cut ties, or B, Dana, they said, the next best thing we got for you, you can't be the talent manager, but you can be an admin assistant. And I was looking at her, I'm talking about Girl Scouts, hilarious, just to make sure y'all on the same page. I looked at my boss and I was like, bruh, you moved me 3,000 or so miles just to tell me I could be a daggone admin assistant. You know how many of them jobs is out there, right? So it's one of those things where it's like without that and me taking the option to be like, you know what, I'm out. I wouldn't have been in the healthcare space. I wouldn't have been in the startup space. I wouldn't have been in this space and that space. And honestly, we wouldn't have been here. So I always love to share and talk more about how we use our setups or our setbacks to set us up for those ultimate comebacks. And it's one of those things where look, Dana, me, the Hilarious, anybody that's listening, we're in the space to where we are history in motion, right? Take everything with a grain of salt. Take everything in a way that will motivate you, because I'm the one that says, hey, look, if you got to take, what happens at the job personally, take it personally. Let it motivate you, whatever that fire may look like.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say now I don't agree with you on you got to get fired in order to have a great career because your girl has a sparkling record of
Oh, of not being fired? Oh, you wanted them, huh?
of
You
not
wanted
being
them.
fired from any organization
Uh,
ever. However, I will say that some of the setbacks, particularly because it's been about a year since I found out the news. I actually found out on my twins' birthday, and they will be 16 next Sunday. So it's been a year since that, and there were so many setbacks. So I graduated with my degree, and then I get laid off. I get divorced in the same month, and then just so many different hits that I took and I really continued to take. I lost my grandmother earlier this year and just different things that I've been thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't take anymore. But I've been taking it like a champ. I've been taking those punches and eating them up and putting everything that is within me into fueling my brand, into fueling my body, into fueling my mind, into being the world-class mother that I am. When I say I'm top tier in motherhood, it is true. That includes twins. So all of that has just been fuel for me to make this thing that you all see as Speak Up Dana, the hilariously unemployed, and become the big speaker. So without those trials and tribulations, y'all, you cannot prevail. So, like you said, like every thing that happens is truly a lesson and something that's going to propel you forward in your career. Now, if anybody in the audience has questions, this is of course the time where you can raise your hand. I will allow you onto the stage to talk to myself and my guest while people decide if they want to talk live. Because if you do come on the show, you will be on the podcast. That is on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and anywhere you get your pod on. Make sure you give your girl a 5-star review. You know, I need those. So let's talk about this always be applying and that slogan. And I also want to talk about, so we talked about Young Black HR in the sense of the podcast and the network, but let's talk about the actual space and how many people you have connected with and connected with me and just the space you've cultivated there for the, but
Mhm.
the people that are a part of that space, the ones that jump me when I said I like Crocs.
So yeah, so what Dana will be is referring to, and Dana will definitely have to share links for all the hilarious to join the community, etc. But one of the things that we have, and it's a big insider for the community, is that when somebody new joins, and this debate started a while back, even before you, Dana, we always ask them, you know, if they put sugar in their grits or salt or something else, and also if they wear Crocs or
Correct.
not. So the group, the broader community is always split on those issues and whatnot. So just to kind of get into more about the community, look, the community, and I always tell people this: the next time you look in the mirror, I don't care if you're getting an eyelash out, you're washing your face, putting your face back on, whatever you're doing, the community of Young Black HR looks exactly like you by the stats, by definition, by all the fancier stuff. Look, most of Young Black HR is a community of human resource and other professionals in the space. So we got project managers, we got engineers, we got unemployed folks, we got HR folks, we got folks from all over.
Yeah.
This community is not local to Seattle, where I'm based out of. This community is all over. And if you've ever been to any of our happy hour events, we've had them in Atlanta, DC, Houston, the Bay Area, Seattle, etc. You know that we have folks from all over. Young Black HR is a community of, at last count, because we always growing. The immediate space you're in, Dana, has about 700 people in on that one platform,
Yeah.
but the broader community is closer to about 6 or 7,000 people
Wow.
from all over.
Wow.
We have folks in the U.S. and Canada, which, by the way, we're doing another live event with them next week. So stay tuned for that. But it's one of those things where this is a community where we can breathe, we can be safe, we can just let our hair down. And even within that community, we have different rooms that, you know, are focused on certain topics. So one of the things that, if you don't know about Young Black HR, is look, we tell the stories of Black professionals inside and outside of the workspace. So we're not just all work. We have a space in there that's the main stage, quote unquote. We got a fitness space in there.
Body
We
yada
got a
yada.
space
That's the
for,
name
yep,
of
come
the
on,
group.
body yada yada, yep. We got a we got a space in there that's for financial fitness. We got a space in there that's for when we think about love and relationships. Stay tuned, because we're doing something really amazing with that.
I'll be in there looking at everybody's profile picture, y'all, trying to see who's getting added to the team. So
Yep.
just know.
Yep. So we got a whole bunch of different spaces, and even the way that the group operates, we can be professional at one moment, or we can be ratchet and after dark the next moment.
Very much
Because
so.
honestly, the overarching theme of our space is: look, we are human. We are more than what we do in our careers. We're more than what we do on LinkedIn. We're more than what we do in general. So it's one of those things where I wanted to create a space where all of those pieces of our intersectionality could come and frolic. And we go from there. We have a good old time. So I'm glad you've been liking it so far, Dana. And it's really been a really special place.
Yeah, I definitely have enjoyed this space and just being able to be in there and chitter chatter with the folks. I've also made some connections through the space. I talked to Robert, and he does an amazing DEI conference in Atlanta. So we talked about that, the panoramic experience. Like there are So many amazing people in there, the information that they share, the laughs that we have, and then having a space for body yada yada. Y'all know I'm a gym girly. Well, y'all might not. Y'all can't see me. I'm fine. So I am a gym girly. And I really enjoy the fact that we have so many different spaces to be who we are at work and outside of work. And really just a great place of connection where people are going to get your memes, your gifts, and your jokes. So, Matt, can you tell people how to join Young Black HR for the young Black HR professionals that are listening?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'll say real quick before I tell, all the places that we're at is look, this is for all of us, right? Don't get hung up on the young part. Don't get hung up on any of that, right? I want to be very clear. It's not like this space is like for, teenagers and 20-year-olds. No, we know how that can go. But it's one of those things where you can find us on a number of different sites. First and foremost, if you haven't already followed us on LinkedIn, just look up the Young Black HR podcast. If you go on my page, and we can share this as well, Dana, I'm always tagging Young Black HR, so you can follow us there. You can also check us out on X, on IG, on Facebook at, you guessed it, Young Black HR, YNG BLK HR. And then also join the community itself, which Dana is in on GroupMe, if you all are familiar with that. So there are a number of different ways that you can all connect and follow us right now. Young Black HR lives on honesthumanresources.com for those that want to check out the website. But I'm very proud to say within the very near future, we'll be dropping youngblackhr.com, and it's going to be really good. Our shows are going to be there. The podcast network is going to be there, including Miss Very Own Dana. After I tell her some more stuff about it, so I'm putting in the atmosphere.
You see how people shoot their shots live,
right? Yep. So it's one of
back you down into that corner live. Y'all hear that?
Yep. So it's one of those things where our shows are going to be there, our merch, because people have been asking me about Matt. Where you get that?
Yeah,
Always be
we need
applying.
the always be applying shirt
I
ASAP.
got you on that. Yep. So we're gonna have merch. We're gonna have our events. We're gonna have a lot of stuff all in one place, so it can be a little bit easier to access us. So honesthumanresources.com, at Young Black HR on your favorite social media platform, and even right here on LinkedIn at the Young Black HR podcast. That's how you can find us.
Absolutely. So, you shared a lot with us, and I want to thank you for everything that you shared with myself and my audience today. Looks like our audience does not have any live questions that they want to ask, but that's been the case for like the last 10 episodes. So I think I'm gonna just start asking y'all. Y'all just want to hear me and my guests? That's crazy to me, but wow, thank you so much for just coming here and listening to us. Now, we know you got a new job or whatnot, that you're dating. That you just found out, but that you just met this job 2 hours ago. Relax.
Right.
But so we know you have this new job, but your slogan is always be applying. So this is your
Always be
opportunity
applying.
to shoot your shots. Please, any potential employers, any potential partnerships, anybody that's listening that should be connected with you in any form of way. What would be your dream connection, partnership, job, or unique relationship? And what qualities would you bring to that space? This is your chance to shoot your shot.
Well, you're too kind, Dana. So first and foremost, I'm a turn the not the mic per se, but I'm gonna turn the opportunity to those who are looking first and foremost. If you are a job seeker or know somebody that's looking, please tell them to reach out to me. Look, we can get into this another time, Dana, but people be gatekeeping referrals
Yeah.
and whatnot and connections, and I'm not that type. So if anybody ever sees anybody in my network that you want to shoot your shot at, just let me know. It takes 2 seconds to make a quick little group and take the horse to the water.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you're going to drink it or not, or what happens after that. But anybody, anywhere on this call, or even as you all are listening, once this is put out, if you see any type of company, and I may have somebody that I know, because trust, I know a lot of people in a lot of places. Um, just let me know first and foremost. But even thinking about my opportunity, Dan, that's a very good question. Always be applying the truth. I tell anybody, and I still stand on this business, that no matter what's going on in your particular situation, I would arguably say your resume should be going out at least once a week, at
Mm,
least. Now that stirs the pot with a lot of people.
yep.
And we're not going to talk about job hopping and job thoughting, as I would call it, and all that good stuff and everything. But it's one of those things where look at the examples that we've had where people have been at companies for years and years, and it's been like the only source of income, and
Yeah.
then now they lost their job. Now they looking silly.
Yeah.
I also will say really quick, I appreciate those of either you here or that'll be listening that have decided to get into the consultant space or some sort of business, right? Because a lot of you all have amazing skills and abilities. Use them outside of the monotonous relationship that you may have with your organization, if possible. So, look, let me answer your question now, Dana. At this point in my career, my stage of life, I'm looking to be one that is continuously strategic.
Mhm.
I'm looking to teach.
Mhm.
I'm looking to consult. I'm looking to mentor. I'm looking to develop. My
Mhm.
particular aspirations aren't tied to one job title or not. As you all have briefly heard on today's conversation, I've been in HR and even more specific talent. And when I decide to reveal, excuse me, what this job is, you're gonna be like, damn, man, that was a hell of a pivot. So I'm already foreshadowing some stuff to you all. But it's one of those things where honestly, I'm looking to just put all my superpowers and bring them all together in the way that I can help the next generation. I'm
Mhm.
looking to connect. I'm looking to say, hey, look, my most job seekers, I go to the highest bidder sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of those things where I'm just looking to ultimately continue to help people out. I'm never going to be one of those people that posts and act like, that didn't come into play or to an effect. But I always want to make sure that my next dream or opportunity is the one that I can help somebody else get theirs. And I definitely want to shout out, let me see who's still in here. Marco, a little fun fact about me and Marco, while I was at Netflix, I actually interviewed Marco.
Mhm.
Granted, in this case, he didn't get that particular position, but those connections are long lasting. And
Yeah.
even for the people that didn't get what they wanted at that time, we're still connected and following each other around. So it's one of those things where I just want to help people. I'm always going to shoot my shot, always going to be
Yeah.
applying.
Mhm.
And yeah, you know me. If you get to know me, I tend to stir the pot more. So that's what my dream job is: helping others, teaching, consulting, and doing a whole bunch of stuff in between, connecting as well.
Awesome. Well, Matt, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode 3 of the Hilariously Unemployed podcast. Hilarious. I cannot thank you enough for continuing to show up each and every Friday and listening to us on podcast platforms. I've been checking the analytics, although y'all not know I'm not a numbers girl and I add in color. I've been checking the numbers and y'all have truly been supporting me and my brand, and I want to thank y'all for that. It's my turn to shoot my shot. Y'all, me and the joyful
Come on,
leaders.
shot
You
shooter.
you
Come on.
you see the joyful leader in the section at Shea Shepherd. We have this amazing session that we did earlier this year for Black and L&D, that is Black Learning and Development Professionals, called Pushing P, Personality as a Profession. And when I tell you this, like we speak all the time and we speak about a lot of topics, right? But this was just something different. And when I say you know how you killing it, we were killing it. And it was so amazing. And I think it was so impactful and transformative for not just ourselves, but our audience. We want to bring this pushing P to those young individuals who are trying to figure it out in their career. And like, I want to be who I am, but how do I make that work in a professional space? And not just young professionals, honestly, everybody. I know for a long time I covered and was not the true big speaker that you see here today. So if you, your organization, your friends, your family, if anybody needs a speaker, get your girls booked for Pushing P, Personality as a Profession. We really want to do that again because we enjoyed it so much. All right, y'all. So, we are headed out for the weekend. Love, 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 love y'all for always joining and always showing so much love to the show. Look out for that to be out over the weekend. If you need to hear the replay, let y'all go. Have an amazing weekend and see you back here soon. Big Speaker signing off. Bye.